The 2022 May Conference. Jeff Salzenstein, 7 serve drills to transform your program.
Teaching the serve for me is something bigger than just teaching the serve. And my intention is to help you all become better coaches after this hour and a half, this 2 hours. When I was at the hotel last night, I saw a quote. I'm at the Marriott, and the JW Marriott quote that I picked up, it's the little things that make a big difference. And I'm absolutely obsessed with details, with the nuance of the serve, seeing every nook and cranny. And I think that's one thing over time, for different reasons, that it's been kind of overlooked in our industry. You know, the typical lesson that I hear from 4-0 players, they might come to me and they hit ground strokes for 50 minutes or volleys, and the last 5 minutes is saved for the serve. And I know there's reasons for that, and as we get going today, I'd love for you just to write down questions you have and even objections, you know, things that you're going to challenge, things that I'm going to share today that you say, well, what about this? Or I'm struggling with this, or, you know, the 4-0 ladies don't want to learn how to hit a proper serve. So different objections or questions that come up, I'd love for you just to write them down, and then we can cover it at the end of today's presentation. So I've been studying the serve probably on and off for 30 years. So in the next hour and a half, hour and 45, you're basically going to get 30 years worth of information. Does that sound cool?
Yeah.
And if you can get one thing to take back to your club and to your members that could make a difference, would that be cool as well?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm not really feeling the energy yet, so I'm going to ask that question again. If you could take one breakthrough tip on the serve, or how you see the game of tennis after today, and you can take it back to your club, how would that make you feel?
Amazing.
Amazing. All right. Okay, that's a little bit better. All right, we'll see if we keep that energy throughout. So I've got to give you, I don't know how much you all know about me other than that, was it hog calling?
Yeah.
Apparently I'm a hog caller. But I actually had my best results on the pro tour when I lived right here in Atlanta, Georgia. I had coaches that I flew back to work with here in Atlanta, and I trained here. And so I was driving over to this club today, and I used to actually hang out at the Whole Foods in Sandy Springs. This was like my hood. So it brings back incredible memories to be back here, really first or second time in the last 15 years. And I know I'm dating myself, but I need to start with my story, since we do have an hour and a half to have you get to know me, but a little bit better. If you haven't followed me online, one of my big marketing messages, which actually is a true story, is when I was 19 years old, I had one of the worst serves in college tennis. So I'm playing at Stanford University. I'm playing number 5 singles. I'm a grinder. So picture your high performance junior. I'm a lefty. I'm serving 95 miles an hour. I'm getting the ball in. All the USTA player development coaches, gosh, Jeff, he's a really nice player. He's really nice. He's scrappy. He wins a lot of matches, but he's not going to play pro tennis. There's no way. He's going to go to Stanford. He's going to get his 4-year degree, and then he's going to become a lawyer, or he's going to go to business school, and he's going to get a real job someday. But a funny thing happened between my freshman year and my sophomore year. I had lost in the qualifying rounds of all of these satellite events. So imagine being 19 years old. Who's 19 years old on the tour that's like, what, 6th in the world right now? Alcaraz?
Alcaraz, yeah.
I was 19 years old, and I could not get one ATP point. Okay? That is not a track to play pro tennis and have an 11-year pro career. So I lose in the qualifying rounds of these satellite events, and the satellites are going to continue with a college circuit that summer. And I said, what the heck am I doing? You know, I can't get out of the qualifying rounds. I've got to change something in my game. So I go home to Denver, Colorado, you know, that hotbed where they just churn out pro players every year. It's really skiers that they churn out. But I go back to my club, and I'm watching Wimbledon that year. It's 1993, so you can probably do the math to figure out how old I am now. And Goran Ivanisevic is on TV. And again, this is TV, this is HBO, if you guys remember the HBO broadcasts. And he's serving bombs at Wimbledon. And I said, you know what? This is before YouTube, before video before any of this stuff. And I'm watching him serve, and I said, you know what? I'm just going to go out and try to copy Goran. So I go out to my club, Denver Tennis Club. I take my hopper of ball just like this, and I go out and I just start serving buckets alone. And I was growing at that time, so I'm not going to lie to you. My physical stature was changing, so that certainly helped. But something clicked just by modeling Goron, and I added 20 miles an hour to my serve. I go back to Stanford my sophomore year, and the legendary Dick Gould sees me serving, and he goes, "What the heck did you do?" I was like, "I just copied Goron." He said, "You're playing number 2 this year." So just by changing my serve and nothing else in my game, by a lot of luck in that particular case, I jumped from number 5 in the lineup to number 2 in the lineup. Kind of a microcosm of how my career went with this transformation of the serve. So I finished my college career. I was one of the top players in college because of my serve. It got me a lot of free points. It really gave me a chance to play pro tennis. And so just 4 years after that transformation, I found myself playing Michael Chang at the US Open in a night match, and I lost a 4-setter. I was serving 125 miles an hour. But I could have stopped there. I could have said, hey, my serve's fine. But like Tiger Woods and like other golfers, I kept tinkering with my swing because I knew I wanted it to be even better. And that's one of the lessons we're going to talk about today, is like how we can help our players improve their serve over time with a short-term view and a long-term view. So in my late 20s, I hadn't broken the top 100 yet, and I had a pinpoint motion, and I had some inefficiencies, and I had some arm problems. And I tracked down a gentleman by the name of John Yandel, who you might be familiar with, before tennisplayer.net even existed. So he had these VHS tapes that you could buy, and I would just watch in slow motion. Actually, in a home here in Atlanta, I would just watch on Friday and Saturday nights. Instead of going to the bars, I was watching Pete Sampras in slow motion, trying to figure out what he was doing. And so I actually met with John, and he helped me understand the serve at a deeper level late in my 20s. So this is kind of my first introduction to video analysis and the power of video analysis and what's possible. And so that summer, I qualified for the US Open after 2 surgeries, almost retired in my mid-20s, but decided to keep going with it. And then later that year, at the age of 30, I broke the top 100 for the first time. So the serve has been like this quest, if you will, as a player, but it didn't stop there. 32 years old, I was struggling with injuries. I was trying to figure out my body, but I was still improving my serve. And I went to Indian Wells, and I was playing in the qualies against a gentleman by the name of Ramon Delgado from Paraguay. And I remember hitting this massive serve that actually felt pretty easy. And I looked up at the speed gun, and hopefully it was accurate. It read 136 miles an hour. And I don't have proof. I wasn't able to go get my phone and take the picture, but hopefully you'll trust me that I actually hit a 136 mile an hour serve. You can see I'm not the biggest guy. I was 6'1". I think I'm 6 foot now. The age is kind of, I don't know what's going on. Got to hang upside down more often. But to go from a guy who couldn't break 100 miles an hour at 19, was hitting 125 at 23, went through 2 surgeries, knee and ankle and shoulder and partial rotator cuff tear, to coming back, upgrading my body, my mind, and technique, and at 32 I was serving 136. That's a pretty big transformation as a player. But I didn't stop there. When I stopped playing, I moved back to Denver, Colorado. I started working with junior tennis players. And here's the thing. The one shot I was least confident teaching was the serve. So here I was with this big serve. You've probably seen it before. All these guys that played on the tour and they think they can coach and they can come off and explain how to teach the serve. I didn't feel confident. So I started calling coaches, like, how do you teach this drill? What do you do here? Because I felt like I could go forehand, backhand volleys, the drill, but the serve I felt intimidated by. So for the last decade, I've made it my mission, become absolutely obsessed with trying to figure out how to teach the serve. And so where this is moving for me is that I'm wondering, after this talk today, if you can go back and think about the serve in a different way and challenge your beliefs around the serve. So one thing that I hear often, I have a 4.0 client that I work with back in Denver on and off, and she has told me, I started playing the game 9 years ago. I go to my lessons, and they just tell me to toss the ball, keep my head up, and use my legs. And that's what I hear for every lesson I go to. And finally I found you, and we've been trying to upgrade it. But here's the thing that she keeps telling me. My 4.0 lady friends, they don't want to learn how to serve. They're just fine with the forehand grip, just getting it in and doing their thing. And some of them are actually serving faster than her. But she's like, I want to learn how to serve like the pros. So I see that side of it, right? We are dealing with a challenge that the serve is the hardest shot in tennis to teach. We're trying to make it fun for everybody, and most people might not want to go on that journey to transform their serve, right? They just want to go out, they want to compete, they want to have a great time. So I'm fully aware of that, and that's, again, something we might be able to discuss at the end of this talk once I start digging into the drills and the concepts. But I think there's a way we can flip that. And here's what I want to present to you. In golf, for the last 25 years, people have been golf instructors and players have been obsessed with the golf swing. Video analysis, mastering the swing. What I wonder is if there's a way in our sport, if we could, as coaches, we could become so proficient at teaching the serve that we feel confident going to every player that shows up and says, listen, I know we want to get you started in the game. You're going to start with that forehand grip. You're going to start, you're going to start your points. You're going to have fun. But there's a long-term play. In 1 year, in 2 years, in 3 years, if you're 40 years old and you're going to play tennis for the next 40 years, maybe we could teach you how to serve over time, that long-term view. So I look at the serve as you have your serve today and you have your future serve, okay? In other words, you have the person you are today and then you have your future self, the person that you aspire to be. So again, I'm going to go a little deep with you guys today. It's not just going to be about the serve. It's about tapping into a higher level, achieving more as coaches and as players. So, with that being said, let's see where we're at here. Okay, so I'm concerned about tennis. I know it grew a lot during coronavirus, the C word, but I am concerned because, as you all might be aware, there's a sport on the rise called pickleball that everybody's playing. Lower barrier to entry, right? Kids are on their devices more than ever, and so we know we have challenges up against us. That's even more reason why we have to up-level the way that we coach. Because if we're better coaches, if we're great coaches, because we know how to teach and we know how to inspire, then we can get more players into the sport. And there will be players that fall in love with the game of tennis that want to keep improving. And what I've found is that when people don't improve, they get discouraged. And some of them keep playing, but they're like, oh, I'll never learn how to serve. Oh, my elbow hurts. I don't know what to do about it. Oh, maybe I'll just go play pickleball now because it's easier. But what if a person could wake up every day and felt like they could actually get better at tennis? And again, the serve is the one thing that I think people really bump up against. So that's a really big concept that I want to drive home today. And so here's what I want you to do. If you have a notebook or if you have your phone, I want you to write down a couple of questions here. All right. Do you have questions about how to teach the serve? Yes or no? Okay. Have you studied different coaches along the way to try to become a better serve coach? Yes or no? Do you have a growth or a fixed mindset around the serve? And a lot of you might say, oh, I have a growth mindset, but when I listen to some of you talk about the serve, I can hear that, oh, this is how I teach the serve. This is what I do. This is the way it is. I want you to consider staying open and being totally growth-minded about a different way of possibly doing things. Do you think about how to grow the game? Yes or no? Do you think about those bigger questions? Because I believe that we have to change the way we teach the serve in our industry if we're going to be more successful, if we're going to get players, even 4-0 ladies serving with a continental grip. I'm not saying they're all going to learn how to do it, but maybe we can present these opportunities for them. I think we have to be able to change how we use our mind and how we use our body, because we're dealing with a lot of 50, 60, and 70-year-old players that are coming to us with injuries, right? So we have to be able to actually help them navigate, hey, do you know this physical therapist, this performance expert, to help them with their feet and their ankle mobility and their thoracic mobility and how their hips move? Because the reality is, if your body can't do certain things, we can ask them to do the shoulder turn and load and coil and all this cool stuff, but most players can't do it physically. So I want you to think of the serve as more of a holistic approach, okay? And you don't need to be the expert at this, but in your area, there are experts. There are people that can help you that you can refer out and say, hey, I think you need to improve how you use your spine and your hips. I think you should get an assessment from this chiropractor or performance expert. All right, on a scale of 1 to 10, how proficient or confident are you at teaching the serve? So I think that's an important question. So just that honest assessment is, where am I at when it comes to teaching the serve? Okay, so one of the things I'm planning on doing, depending on time, is about a little over halfway through, I'm going to take a little intermission and just take stock of where everyone's at, instead of just going all the way through. That way, when you're writing down your questions, and again, bring objections to me, hey, I don't think this can work, Jeff. Bring it to me about a little over halfway through. I'm just going to check in. So I just want to set that in advance, that we're going to get through, I would say, 4 steps before we get to that intermission, a little over halfway through. And so with that, you're probably tired of hearing me give my sermon about the state of tennis and the state of the serve. I'm going to start to dig in. So before I get into the grip, we're going to talk about the grip, which I think is one of the biggest bugaboos in the serve. 80%, I'd say 80% of all players have a forehand grip. If we can help them get a continental grip, it'll change everything. Before I get into that, I want to talk about just some basics that I do with the serve. If someone comes to me and we have 10 minutes or they got a tournament tomorrow, we're not going to start changing technique, okay? Some basics. Most people, and again, I'm not going to ask a lot of questions going forward. I'm just going to give you the answers. But the way that I see it is, most people, when they serve, they don't aim to targets. I know that just sounds like common sense, right? Yeah. But when I'm working with players that say, I'm struggling with my serve, I say, what are you focusing on? Oh, I'm trying to get my toss in the right place. I'm trying to use my legs. I'm trying to, get my arm in the right position. It's all internally focused. I rarely hear a student say, I aim to my targets. And that's the thing that the pros are all doing. Obviously, they've locked in their technique, but players are not aiming to targets. So when I'm working with a player and I know I can't change their technique, right now I can get them serving better right away if I get them focused on their targets. So here are a couple things that I do. Notice where the targets are right now. And again, this is level dependent. So if someone's serving 50 miles an hour, you're probably not going to put the targets here. But if someone at a higher level is serving, let's say, over 100 miles an hour, 90, 100, you can put the targets here. Now, why do you think I put the targets here instead of here? What's that?
Margin for error.
More margin for error, right? What I've found is that if we put the targets here, it's not much different than having your big targets back on the baseline so that nobody's missing wide and nobody's missing deep. So I love putting the targets 2 to 3 feet short of the service line, which I think just flips the whole dynamic, because what I found when I got nervous and my contact point was a little bit low, my best serves landed here. But when I put my targets here, it forces me to do what? Get up and almost hit down on the serve. Again, this is higher performance. I realize that. But even your players, if you notice that they are missing long, their serve long, you might want to put these targets here. Now, you might say, well, gosh, we put the targets here. Now all the serves are going in the net. Here's the next progression I go to. I always have players aim through an imaginary window right here. So the analogy I like to use is that if you were to go bowling and you see the pins all the way down at the end of the lane, what's in the middle on the wood?
The arrows.
The little arrows, right? So for me, the window over the net are my arrows. So instead of looking through the net to hit my target, I actually have players look through an imaginary window, and I tell them just hit it through the window. That's it. Windows, short targets. Now, let's get into a little bit of the mental stuff before we dive into the grip. If a player misses in the net, and I ask them, okay, why'd you miss the ball in the net? What are some of the things they might say?
Down on it.
I hit down on it, right?
Toss two in front.
Toss was 2 in front.
Drop the shoulder.
Drop the shoulder. Okay, this is what I tell them to do. Hit it higher. Hit it higher. Because your body and your mind will figure it out if you keep telling yourself what you're going to do. So if you're hitting the serve in the net, they say higher. Okay? If the ball goes, I know this is like so like simple, but I've been doing this long enough where I don't hear people doing this until I coach them on it because they're focused so much on their technique. All right, ball goes this high, goes long. What do I have them say? Lower, right? So try it out. Go to your lesson and say higher, lower. I have found that if a player mishits the serve, a lot of times it goes where? In the net. So then I'll just say, hey, make it pop. Or here, listen for that sound. There's no technique happening right now. Nothing. It's higher, it's lower, make it pop. Here's what's happening. Most people, when they miss a serve, and this is where we're going to get into a little bit of the mindset Jedi tricks, they're telling us, and even coaches, but the players are telling us what they did wrong, right? I pulled my shoulder down. I pulled my head down. Well, every time you're doing that, your mind and your body is getting reinforced that you did the wrong thing. It's that whole judgment thing, all right? We're getting into some of the life skills here too, all right? So it's all weaved together here. If you get your players to start telling you what they're going to do next, higher, lower, more pop, dunk it, hit up, instead of telling you what they're doing wrong, I bet you're going to start getting better results with your players. But it starts with who? You. How you all speak to them. So I want you to start to become aware of your languaging and your words around the serve. Are you telling them, hey, you just pulled your head down? Hey, you just dropped your shoulder. Hey, stop hitting it in the net. You all have to take your languaging and your communication skills to the next level. If everyone in the country just went out on the court and said higher, lower, head up, dunk it, deeper, shorter, if you spoke like that, you're going to get better results out of your players. I can almost guarantee it. In fact, I'd go so far to say I guarantee it. Bold statement, okay? Now, I call those short little phrases, one word, little phrases like hit it higher or hit up, I call them caveman words. Okay, so if you want to steal that and say, hey, I got these caveman words I want to help you with, higher, lower, make it pop, shorter, deeper, window, target. Those are all caveman words. And that's where you need to help your players go. And just observe. Observe what happens, okay? So, the reason I wanted to start there is because if I want a quick win with a player, and I had this a couple weeks ago, I was working with a junior player, his father asked me to come out, his father happens to be a top psychiatrist, he works with kids with mental health issues, and he's like, I can't figure out how to help my kid with his serve, he's got the yips. Go out on the court, and we just played this game for 20 or 30 minutes, and we got incredible results. He played his next tournament, it was completely different for him. So just working on that, I didn't even touch his technique. Just know you can get a different result with the serve without going to technique. Make sense?
Yep.
Any questions? We good so far?
Yep.
Okay. This is probably the point in the story where we're 20 minutes in and you might be bored already and you're like, I just want to get out of here. But you actually have to now learn the entire technical framework in 1 hour. Okay? So we're going to start with the grip. So, like I said, I just talked about the mental, the emotional, the focus, the targets first, because that's the most important thing to do if you want to get a result. Now we're going into that longer term viewpoint, the grip. So, I have a friend, his name's Mark Merklin. He was an NCAA champion, and he and his partner developed the Grip MD. And so this is the sales pitch for the Grip MD. This is the part of the presentation, the commercial for the Grip MD. The reason I love the Grip MD, and there's other devices out there, and you've probably used different devices. I like the Grip MD because it's a cool little mold right here that you put on the grip for a Continental. They don't have lefty, so keep that in mind. But you probably have players that when they toss the ball, they might be in a Continental and then they re-grip.
Yep.
Can't do it with this. It's not possible. You can't do it. So again, at the end of our presentation, we can talk about how we can set up working with players on the serve and how that might look. But I would encourage all of you to get a Grip MD or figure out a way for your club to order a bunch of Grip MDs, because just by having players hold this grip, they're forced to figure it out, right? They can't cheat. I even see players that tell me they're in a continental grip, but they're actually in a probably more of an Eastern forehand grip. You've probably seen that as well. It's not a true continental. And if anything, if people have been in a forehand grip for a long time, ideally we want to get it to like a strong continental, so where it moves more like, you know, when you see Djokovic serve and you see the racket face up like this instead of like this. So we want to try to get them comfortable in this grip. Now, I do have an affiliate link, and I'll get a couple dollars if you guys decide to buy through my link. But I also have Mark's number and his email, so if you want to order in bulk, you can do that as well. But I think this is one of the number one go-to things you could do right now if you want to try to get them out of this grip and into this grip. And again, the way I would explain it and say, listen, you got your serve today, you're going to go out on the court tomorrow, and you got to compete, you got to win, you got to aim to your targets, you got to make your adjustments. That's what you're going to do. But give them the long-term plan. Say, hey, listen, in 1 year from now, would you like to have a serve that looks more like Roger Federer? How many of them are going to raise their hand and say yes? A lot of them, right? So it's up to us to actually say, hey, here's the progression. Again, I look at golf. They've been doing, you know, swing analysis, golf tech. You can go to indoor golf lessons. I wish we had indoor serve lessons where you just, in the off season, they went and they learned how to serve, because there was a progression. There was a way to create this and follow this. In karate, there's seven colors in karate. What if in the serve there was belts on the serve where until you get a continental grip, you got a white belt? You know, how many of them will still start competing to get to that orange belt or that blue belt? So again, we can blame it on the players. They don't want to learn the serve. But I just bring it back to us and say, okay, what if we just revamp the whole deal and we found a way to with coaching education, that every club in the country, I'm getting on my soapbox now, you could walk in and a player that's new to the sport could say, in 1 year's time or 2 years' time, if I do these things, I will learn how to serve properly, instead of them going 10 years and still having that forehand grip. All right, so we got the grip here, and some of the basic things that you can start to do is get them in a continental grip. And again, some of you might already be doing this. Hopefully it'll validate what you're already doing. Maybe you'll get some new ideas. Simply have them practice hitting on edge like this, right? So they can just, you know, even if it's the beginning of the lesson, you can just have them go down like this. Now the next little progression here is they're in this position, and right at the end they open up, right? So they're learning how to rotate the forearm. But get them going here first, right? Okay? You can just practice this. Get them comfortable in a continental grip. Make sure it's not here. Continental grip. Even go more towards backhand. Here. They can just rotate the forearm. Pretty simple, right? I would go so far as to say you could actually have them use the backhand side like this and learn to rotate, because remember, we've got all these players that are doing this, yeah? So we have to do the opposite. I'm a big exaggeration person. So you could have them actually start with the racket like this, and they could even rotate. It doesn't matter where they hit it on the racket, just getting that feeling of rotating, right? And so from here, what I'll have people do, players do, is obviously a lot of players don't serve very well. Don't throw a ball very well. So we got to get them practice throwing the ball. But even if they're not throwing the ball, if you'll notice this motion here, usually even players that aren't able to throw a ball very well, they can start to get this motion right here where they're just swinging in a continuous fashion. And obviously you can have the ball, you can practice getting players to, throw the ball up like so. But you'll learn a lot about where they put their arm position when they get back into here, their arm and their hand. And you can look for this, right? And you can help them with this. What if it was just, the first couple minutes, you got permission from them to do a couple of these little drills over time? Maybe it'll plant a seed for a few of the players in your group. Or if you are giving private lessons, you can work with them on that. I would go so far again as to say, okay, let's teach them that when you get to here, and you pretend to throw the ball, you'll see that rotation there. So you have the palm of the hand going towards you here, right? You see this, and then it rotates. What if you had them go back of the hand? Again, these are all what ifs, right? What if you have them go back of the hand and then they rotate, so they can really feel this? Because remember, a lot of people are doing this. Yeah. So we're just trying to completely change how the body works. So they could actually practice going at the ball with the back of the hand, and at the last moment, they rotate. And I believe they should get the feeling in their hand like what I'm doing right here, instead of bringing the racket and the ball into place and the net and the target and all the things that go into like competing. It's a lot of distractions. So the next place you can go is, now you have the racket, you've done this, you've rotated, okay? You've even maybe done a little bit of this. Now you've done some of this. So you can just come up and practice, again, hitting on edge. See if they can hit the ball on edge. See if they can actually go back of the ball. Again, just changing what they normally do, right? We're just trying to change what they normally do. So they do that a few times. Look at how I'm going to the back of the ball there, the backhand. Then I can rotate, right? So I come at it, and then I can rotate. Obviously, I'm moving super fast. A lot of these players are going to struggle with these kind of little funky grip drills. But anything we can do, this is for that player that opens up, frying pan right here, anything we can do to do the opposite. And we're going to get into a cool drill on the early racket drop in a bit that's related to this as well. I'm really big on this exaggeration principle. So I would try it, experiment, and see if you get your players to come at the ball like this, if they struggle with opening up, how long will it take them? Will it take them a month or 2 months? Maybe it's a couple sessions where they actually get the feel at coming the ball like this and then rotating. Okay? Does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. All right, so again, shameless plug. My link, if you guys want to buy the Grip MD, and again, I just make a couple bucks on it, but it's tennisevolution.com/GripMD. And then, again, afterwards, if you want Mark's contact information, I can give it to you also right now. Their business number is 561-489-2440, and I already spoke to him before. He sent me a few of these, and maybe we'll have some trivia questions at the end, where you guys can win a free Grip MD at the end of this presentation if you answer some of the trivia questions correctly. Okay, let's get into the second.
Jeff, what was the number again?
561-489-2440. Let's get into the second phase of things. So we started with the grip, and now we're going to move into the setup and the stance. And this is the thing, again, is just like totally overlooked, that I believe if you start to get people in the right stance and how they set up and how they're going to start the motion, you can solve a lot of issues before they even start moving. So, a couple things that I see is at the beginning of the motion, when everybody gets started to serve here, there's a lot of tension. You guys seen stuff like this, like arm is straight, arm is away from the body. What else do we see? Help me out. Any other stuff that's weird? No? Okay. Go ahead.
With the feet in position.
Feet, grip pressure, tight,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Actually, let me talk about grip pressure things. I forgot with the grip. Some of the biggest breakthroughs you can have with players is they're holding the racket, they're choked up. I know some of this is obvious. They're in what I call a block grip. So look for that index finger if you aren't already. Get the index finger spread and see if you can get them to move the racket so the heel of the hand is off of the racket. So when they get started, getting back to that tension, the arm and the racket are relaxed like this. So most people are like this. You'll see the tip of the racket up and the wrist cocked. I want to get it in here. So make them shake it out, super loose. And again, don't overlook what I'm showing you right here in step number 2, right? We know the grip is a beast, but once we start moving into the actual serve, getting people set up in a relaxed way is critical. And I see a lot of video analysis, a lot of serves come my way where they're not set up. And again, this is a serve framework that I've developed. It doesn't mean you have to follow it to a T. I'm just trying to give you some parameters where you can go back and say, oh, now, man, everybody's standing and they just look so tight. I see a lot where I see the wrist cocked, I see the racket up, and I see this shoulder up. So one of the things I like to do is get people set up. I like them in a staggered stance. I like to teach the platform before I get into the pinpoint because it removes a variable. As soon as someone is proficient at certain things, right, when they've graduated to what, maybe blue belt? When they're at blue belt, maybe we can start to get the foot to move up, okay? But in the beginning, I like to get them set in a staggered stance like this. So, there's different ways you can have players start. I call it the Federer start, I call it the Sampras start, but the one I'm actually gravitating more to is just having the feet, the weight equally distributed between both legs. So the Federer start is all of the weight forward, and then he rocks back. The Sampras start would be all of the weight back, right? So by doing that, you actually learn how to transfer the weight at the right time. But I think in the beginning, a lot of players should just learn how to just have equal weight right here. Not too far forward, not too far back, just equal weight on both feet. Right in here. And you'll notice whether the arms are straight or whether I bring them up like this, I want to feel like they're relaxed. And you'll notice how far away is the racket from my body? It's pretty close, right? It's not out here. So now go back to your club and to your players and see where their arms are when they start. I bet you'll find stuff like this, right? You'll also find that a lot of players, when they start serving, their knees are a little bit bent. And again, you're going to hopefully look at the serve a different way when you go back. And so then when they toss the ball, what do their legs do? Right? That classic, this one, right? But we can eliminate that just by making sure they have, pogo sticks for legs. They're just totally straight. It might look stiff, but you could even, in this one case, you could say, lock out your legs, basically. Because that little bend gets this movement to happen. It's like the reverse knee bend. So we get the legs straight, and we get the arms relaxed, and maybe the legs will, the body weight will shift forward. I'm finding I want to go forward a little bit here, or maybe it's a little bit back, but you want your players to feel like they're stable, but they're relaxed. Okay? Now, as we get more advanced with a player, and you get them into this position right here, if you notice, and we're going to get into this next phase, which is called the first move, and I actually think this is the most important phase of the serve to get everything going in the right direction. If you have a more advanced player and they're struggling being able to turn, so if you see more of this, or even, again, a more advanced player, you see kind of this position in the trophy position, and they're having a hard time turning, you can have them slide their foot back this way. Again, this is probably, we're looking at like maybe 4.5 and above, so 3.5, you might not want to do that. I think a 3.5 is good here. 4.0, you can start to look at sliding the foot back a little bit here. But if they're not turning and they're just moving their arms at the beginning, one way to facilitate more turn is to simply slide this foot back. There's a reason John McEnroe had this incredible turn, right? The other part that's really, really cool is if someone has a hard time rotating and coiling and loading, you can open up this back foot like this, a la Pete Sampras. So you get them here, and you rotate this back foot open a little bit, and that allows a player to turn along this line like this. Okay, just a simple little tweak. Again, more advanced player on this one. The player that's just getting started learning the game, or they're at that 3.5, 4.0 level, I think you just want to keep the stance simple like this, and you want to make sure they're relaxed at the beginning. As we move up the chain, the ladder, we can slide it back and we can turn it out. And And that makes it so much easier to feel this turn in the beginning. Okay, we good there?
Yep.
All right. Step number 3 is the first move. And if there's one thing that I want you to get, besides the target stuff and the grip stuff, no, and the stance stuff, no. The first move, this is like, for me, this is it. This is the ticket. This is the holy grail for me. Yes, there's more after. Yes, there's more before. But I think we could solve a lot of serve issues if players and coaches considered what I'm about to show you. So, the myth of the serve, that crazy mistake or myth, is down together, up together, right? The arms are moving like this. So what's my body doing when my arms are moving like this? What's it doing? The rest of my body? Nothing, right? It's all arm. Okay, let's take a baseball player. Is a baseball player, you know, they're in the major leagues and they get up, are they just going like this? No, they're here, right? A golfer, are they just going like this? So why are we letting players start their serve where they go like this? Why are we doing that? Okay, we have to help our players understand how to start the serve. If we can get them to start the serve better, it's like a domino effect. Everything else gets better. Everything else flows from there. But we're off course. As soon as these arms move here, it's over. It's over. Absolutely over. So here's the framework I'm going to give you. You get them set up in this stance, and this is going to be, I want you to go back and start studying serves. Again, there's pros on the tour that are not doing what I'm about to show you. So it doesn't mean it has to be this way. I want to be very clear. This presentation is not about I'm right and you're wrong and everyone's wrong. So I hope it doesn't come across this way. This is just me just exploring and saying, here, I think this is an easier way to do it. You all decide what you want to take and what you don't want to take with you. The very first move, what I see over and over again, it doesn't matter if it's the ladies at the club, it doesn't matter if it's your UTR 11, 12, same stuff happening, just different levels. I see the arms move like this, and then I see the knees bend. Can we get behind that? Mm-hmm. So what would be the opposite of that?
Kind of do it together. Bend and toss.
Bend together. Bend and toss. That is it right there. Bend and toss. So here it is. Even when I tell people to bend and toss, I still see this, and then I see a bend. So now we need to picture Roger Federer for a moment. What does he do? If you study closely, and this is when I do video analysis, and this is if you are going to do video analysis, or you just shoot it on your phone. This is the point in the motion I want you to look at. When the ball is being released, what is the body doing? Ask yourself that question. When the body is released, what is the body doing? And you're going to find a lot of funky stuff. You're going to find this. You're going to find this. Everything. You'll find rackets down here. It's everywhere. So what I think that we should all consider doing or looking at is when the ball is released, there should be a little knee bend, like right before the ball is even released. This right here. So imagine, again, if we think about a golf swing, or if we think about going to the dojo and learning karate, the dojo master would never let the person go to that next level until what? Until they can do that one little move, right? But we kind of let things go because we want to make sure everybody at the club's having a good time on the court. But there's a certain population of tennis players that want to learn how to serve correctly. They don't have the answers, so we need to figure out a way to create this for them. So this first move, it looks like this. That's it. How many of your players look like this when they release the ball? And I'm going to explain why we're going to do this, why we do it this way in a moment. But how many of your players do this? What's that?
Few, if any.
Few, if any. I don't see it because I just had a kid who signed with Notre Dame fly from California to Colorado to work with me on a public court, and he's 6'5" and he has a 109-mile-an-hour serve, and he can't find the answers. And that was the biggest breakthrough we made, was that his motion is like this, and then he goes down. So what happens when we toss the ball in the air and we haven't bent our knees yet, and our racket is up here already? what starts to happen? Any ideas? The elbow drops because you're waiting for the ball. The toss gets really high, so now you've got that Sharapova toss where the ball actually drops like 3 or 4 feet, and we tell them, hey, don't let the toss drop. Well, it's dropping because they're releasing the ball and they haven't really started their leg motion, so they have to wait. The ball's up, and then they're here, or they're here, or they're here, and then the ball drops and descends, and it's harder to time. So I like the ball to drop about 18 inches, ideally. But again, if you look at Nick Kyrgios, the ball doesn't drop. Bob Bryan, the ball didn't drop. So I think the ball should drop about 18 inches, maybe max 2 feet. But with most of these players, we see a high toss and the ball drops 3 feet. So you're going to get your players to learn this move right here. Okay? And again, if they have their normal serve, they have to have that serve they're going to go compete with, and then this is the longer term play. This is to say, hey, if you want to really get in sync with your body, it should look like this at the beginning. Okay? The arm can be, this is the other thing with that. The arm has to be a little bit lower. So we know people have a tendency to bring the racket up like this. So now the racket's up high, and then they have to wait, and then the elbow can drop, or it stays high. It does a lot of weird things. So you want to make sure that you try to get this motion, and you can even do it without the racket. You can just be here. Look at where my hand is. Somewhere in here, but not up here. So it's a complete rewiring with that first move. Okay, I'm going to go over to the back fence. Actually, camera's not going to be in. I'm here. I can film you. I can just do it right here. I'll just do it right here. So I'm close to everyone. So one way to do this is give them a prop. Give them like the back fence. I usually go to the back fence. And so what you're going to do... All right, so what you're going to do is you can just have them make this move right here. And when they make this move, their head's going to want to turn. The reason why it's going to want to turn is because they're trying to get turned. So you need to make sure the chin of the front shoulder stays to the front shoulder right here. And they need to still be able to turn. The serve is a beast. This is a hard freaking motion. This is like the hardest thing in the world to teach. It's probably the hardest skill in sport to teach. But you need to practice this. And what I like to have players do is even lift up the back leg. I call it load and coil drill against the fence. Very creative name. But have them pick up this foot. And as soon as you pick up this back foot, the hips start to turn. But you're not allowed to have them, the head cannot turn. The chin has to stay on the front shoulder. You'll also notice, and we're going to get into it next, is with the toss and the trophy position, is that when they do this move, which direction does my tossing arm go? It goes out to the net post, about a 45-degree angle at a diagonal. So I'm not a big fan of the J toss, okay? If it works for you, if it works for your players, go for it. I think it complicates it. So as you're turning, now the tossing arm has to go out this direction. That's why, again, this is such a complicated first move. And I'm very realistic to know that, again, if I have 4 3.5 ladies show up to my court, I'm not all of a sudden going to start teaching this, okay? So just keep that in mind. I'm not expecting this, but I think there are ways to weave it into your programming. But this is what I would try to get players, and I've even worked with adults where they get this in one lesson, 2 lessons. Now, can they do it in a match yet? No. But they start to get the feeling that's different than this. Okay? So, we haven't even talked about tossing the ball yet, and that's the thing when I survey my list with my online website. What's the number one problem you have with your serve? Toss. 100%. It's not the number one thing. They think it is, and I have to tell them, okay, I'll help you with your toss. That's what you want? I give them what they want, but I also give them what they actually need. And what they need is how to hold the racket correctly, how to start the motion where they're relaxed at the beginning, and how to do this. That's it. So if you can get your players to start to feel that at the beginning of the motion, now we're moving towards what, orange belt or blue belt. But if you can't get those three things, then we're behind, we're behind the 8 ball trying to figure this out. Okay, does that make sense?
Yep.
All right. We're going to move now to, I'm going to actually give you some drills too besides that one. So four progressions that I have that I work with players on, and what I've learned in the last couple of months is it's actually maybe not as good as I thought it was going to be because I'm seeing some issues come up. And that's why I just showed this move. And you can even get players to use this continuous motion. If you have players swing like this, you'll start to see that their shoulders start to turn. But as soon as this thing gets implemented right here into the swing, we go back to this, right?
Yep.
So there's ways to do it where you can actually get them, right? We want this move first, right? This move first. Then we could actually get them to do it with their eyes closed, okay? We could actually get them to do it with their eyes closed, and then they can swing. And you can watch for that. And you build these progressions without the ball, and then with the eyes closed, and just start to get them have that feeling, okay? 4 progressions that I think are really important. But I'm going to have the caveat that that last one I showed you, I think is actually the most important with the first move, based on what I learned in the last month, actually. So position number 1, I call it the half serve. And the half serve is simply putting the racket in this position. But what we find, even with video coaching, is that I have the drill, I have the video, I tell them this is what I want you to do, position 1, half serve, and they're still not putting their racket in the right position or the most efficient position. So the half serve means the racket is actually on the same side of the body as your dominant arm. So a lot of players still put it like behind them, or they put it here. It's got to be here. And not only that, the tip of the racket has to be facing this direction, and the wrist is a little bit relaxed. So again, it's about getting into that relaxed position. So I start players in this position right here. Feet are equally balanced with the weight equally distributed. And then when they toss the ball, they just work on this move right here. But again, what I'm finding is that a lot of people are not getting set up efficiently here, so then it starts to break down. So just keep that in mind. You can put people in the half serve position, but you have to be very detailed about getting them here. Most of the time, players are still too far away. So if anything, I want the hand for them to almost feel like it's touching their ear, like this. That's what it's going to feel like. And when they turn, a lot of times when they turn, what I see is the arm goes away. The arm goes away. So when they turn, they need to practice keeping the arm in the same position. Most players want to manipulate by using their arm and moving in a different direction. So the arm is close, and then we turn. That's it. That's it. Now I say that's it, but it's a very difficult move for players to get. Position number 2, once they get better at this, just getting into that move right here. Position number 2, I call it bent arm position. You take the hand by the waist right here, and the wrist is still relaxed. It's not cocked. And remember, the tossing arm is going to lead. So this is going to lead, and as soon as the ball is released, then we start to bring this arm up. But they should not graduate to position 2 until they get better at position 1. Okay? Position 2 is here. Position 3 is 3/4 serve. So now we're not in the full motion. The racket is dangling with the strings facing the back knee right here. Okay? It's just right here. Again, you toss the ball, and then the racket comes up. That's position 3. Because what I find is that everybody that starts in the full motion, which is position 4, again, this is where the problems are happening, in the first 4 inches of the swing, the first 6 inches. So if I can help someone serve, if I can help someone get into a half serve position right here and actually learn this, okay, it's much simpler to find this position. You can probably see my hand's not moving, right? It's just staying right here. If they can get better at this, then we can graduate to here. Then we can graduate to here. Then we can graduate to here finally. The challenge I come up across is most people don't want to serve in a half serve. They don't want to go play their tournament in a half serve. They don't want to compete. I'm like, well, do you want to learn how to serve? Like, this whole full motion, it's like we're trying to go to black belt before we've even conquered orange belt. It's progressions. And so you want to try to educate your students that, hey, this is part of the long-term plan. You don't want to try to convince them to this when they have their tournament the next day. You want to give them the short-term plan, which is all the mental stuff and the targets. Hey, we got this covered, all right? Now, in 1 year's time, if you do these drills consistently, you're going to have a better serve. It's going to be technically better, okay? So, those are the 4 progressions. Position 1, half serve. Position 2, bent arm. Position 3, 3/4, just because it's almost a full serve, but not quite. The strings are facing the knee. You'll notice again, the back knee. You'll notice again, the wrist is relaxed. And when I bring it up, the wrist is relaxed, okay? We're not tight. And then we're also, again, we're not bringing the arms up. You have to look for this, still this rotation and this move. That's why I taught the first move before I got to these progressions, because I want players to feel this little move right here. Now we're gonna move on to the trophy position and the toss. So the drill that I like to have players get into on the trophy position, and again, keep in mind, there are players that have different types of trophy positions. We'll talk about that. There are players on the tour that when we have to define the trophy position, but like Nick Kyrgios, for example, when his arm goes up, his racket's pretty low before he starts to fire up to the ball. You can do it that way. The way that I tend to lean is more towards that Federer model where we can really see the racket in this position right here in the trophy, okay? Here's a big part of the trophy position. I call it the phone booth method, okay? Or the phone booth tip. I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, but that's what we're going with. When players get to here, what do we usually see in this position? Say it louder. Someone say something.
The racket starts to fall early.
Okay, it starts early, and that's going to be my next tip. I see that. So if you start watching videos, I see the wrist cocked, right? And I see the hand further away from the head. This is the common thing that I see. So what we want to help them do is when they get to here, you should just, it's like a checkpoint. When they get to here, what do you notice about my wrist? Yes, you're making that move. It's called ulnar deviation. I didn't know that till about 6 months ago because I'm not a science nerd. But finally, some of my biomechanics coaches said, hey, just call it ulnar deviation. It's like you're hammering something. But what I want you to notice is when players are in the trophy position, the racket is often like something like that, or the elbow's down here. So what I like to see is I want in the trophy position, I like to see the racket more vertical. See how it's vertical? We're in the phone booth now. Because if we're out here, we're outside the phone booth. We're hitting the, right? So this is what I see a lot, and then watch what happens when I just ulnar deviate. Look at where the racket goes. See that? Looks better, doesn't it? Did I move anything in my body other than my wrist, right? And then I pull my hand in a little bit closer, so I'm about at a 90-degree angle, a little bit less. But this is the position. So what if you just got someone in the trophy position and they could feel it with their eyes closed, and it's like the racket is a dead weight. You see that? Looks a little bit like Federer, doesn't it? Yeah. So what has Federer mastered other than technique? What has he mastered when it comes to the serve and everything else? The art of, say it? Placement. What else in his body? The art of relaxation, right? I mean, this is Federer right here. Our local players at the club, God, I just hope I get this ball in today. Oh, my elbow and my shoulder hurts. I wonder why. So if you can help your players learn how to relax, remember in the starting position, arms are relaxed, wrist is relaxed, hand is loose. Okay, we start this move, it's very easy. Look at that. I mean, I know I say it's easy, but it's an easy kind of relaxed move. It's not a forced move, right? So we have to help our players learn how to relax a little bit. When they get to the trophy, again, they're going to go to here. We just get a little ulnar deviation, okay? That's your trophy position right there. Again, just a little checkpoint, a little drill you can do. I call them trophy position holds. Right? You can test it. You can see how does it look from the back? How does it look from the side? Where does their weight go? A lot of these players, they're going to go right to their front foot. They're not able to load. Remember the load and coil drill? You could even have them practice tapping the toe like this. Look where my weight is. Again, a lot of players, if they can't do this, that means they physically can't do it, which means what? You got to refer them out to your best performance expert locally and say, hey, we need to check your hip mobility, we need to check your single leg strength. Most players are not going to be able to do this. So we can't ask our players to have a Federer type serve if they physically can't do it. If they're an older player, again, I get most of my clientele online, it's a 45 to 65 year old male. How many 45 to 65 year old males have good mobility? I heard a laugh, right? So if we want to age gracefully, if we want the fountain of youth, guess what? We have to work on our mobility. So you can actually, as a coach, inspire them to say, hey, do you want to be feeling great when you're 70 or 80? You got to work on your mobility. You're not just a tennis coach. You're a life coach out here. You can just sprinkle these things in, right? Little mental tips, little physical tips, little suggestions on how they can make the most of the next 30, 40 years of their lives. Okay. Staying with the trophy position. When you go